Good evening, everyone. My name is Keyla Hernandez-Ulloa. I'm with the Federal Communication Commission's Consumer Affairs and Outreach Division. Tonight we'll be presenting about some of the high priority consumer topics that the FCC is focused on. My colleagues Alma Hughes and Chantal Virgile will also be joining me in the presentation later on. Again, happy to be here, and let's begin. So the first topic that I'd like to discuss is the broadcast television transition. My colleagues will be talking more about robocalls, spoofing scams, and our resources that are available to consumers, especially the Consumer Help Center. But what we wanted to let consumers know is back in April of 2017, there was what was called the end of the incentive auctions. And for shortness sake, what that meant was that the broadcasters sold back to the FCC some of the spectrum that they were not using, and then the spectrum was auctioned off to wireless service providers. The wireless service providers that bid and won in the auction are using the spectrum that they won to improve wireless services. Now, why is this so important for consumers? Well, there's one big thing. Unlike the digital television transition that you may remember took place in 2009, this is a little different. Your channels will stay the same. What will change is the broadcaster's frequency. And so for those of you that receive all your programming over the air with a TV that has an antenna either right on top of the television, or for some people it's a rooftop antenna, we have a message reminding consumers to please rescan. Why this is important? Well, and I'm going to make this up. Let's say in this area, the most popular channel is channel 20. Everyone gets up every morning, you look at the news, your favorite TV shows are on this channel, and then the next day you wake up and you turn to your favorite channel and your TV screen is blank. You're wondering, well, what happened? I had this channel yesterday. So what we're recommending, if this happens to you, please remember to rescan. Now, I will step back and say that the broadcasters are doing a wonderful job of letting their viewers know when they're changing frequencies. Again, the channel will stay the same, but the frequencies are changing. A lot of the broadcasters are calling their day a rescan day, and they start at least 30 days before the actual transition happens, letting consumers know, their viewers, that this is going to happen. But let's say you miss, for whatever reason, you miss this announcement and you wake up, again, back to the blank screen. What we're letting consumers know is that the FCC is here to help you. We have a Rescan call center, which is available at our toll-free number, 1-888-225-5322, and the information is also available on the tip cards that we have here for you. What you do is you call that number and press the number 6. It will lead you directly to an operator that can help you carry you through the rescan process. And we know this is important because for many of us, we may have that TV that gets all its programming over the air, but we may not have the manuals that came with the TV. We may not even have the original remote that came with the TV. And so this is why the FCC is here to help you with the process of rescanning. And even after your broadcaster has already changed in the frequencies, we like to remind consumers that whether you are experiencing the transition or not, it's always a good advice to rescan your television every so often, just to make sure that you are receiving all the local over-the-air channels that are available in your area. So again, that number for the Rescan call center is 1-888-225-5322, press number 6. And the call center is actually available 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern time, because we realize that consumers sometimes are not available during the day because they may have jobs or other things to do. So now I would like to also turn over the floor to my colleague, Alma Hughes, who will talk about robocalls and spoofing scams.
Good evening. As Ms. Keyla said, my name is Alma Hughes. And just briefly, I'm going to say something to you about robocalls. And I I was told when we started on Monday that in the Minnesota and Wisconsin area, you all do get robocalls, correct? And which has become a real big nuisance for all of us. Back home in DC, we get them also. I think a lot of us may have this little toy, you know, that we carry around with us, which is our cell phone. Well, one of the things that we suggest, first of all, that you should do, protect your cell phone. And what you can do, you can put a password on your cell phone, just in case you may lose it or you may set it down. And if I was to find your cell phone, if you got a password on it, it'd be hard for me to get in it. So we suggest that if you do not have a password on your phone, to put one on there. You can call your cell phone provider and they can help you, walk you through putting a password on your phone. Of course, it's going to be one that you can recognize. Now, robocalls. We're getting them every day. While you're sitting here, you may be getting a robocall now, you may be getting one on your landline at home. So one of the things that we ask you to do, if you see a number come across here on your phone and you do not recognize it, don't answer it. And I can sit up and say, it's just that simple, but for some of us, it's not just that simple. Because we were told Minnesota and Wisconsin are nice. Is that true? Okay. Well, then you still can be nice. You don't have to answer that phone, especially if you do not recognize. Now, if you so happen to pick up because you want to know who's calling and you don't recognize the person or you don't recognize what they're saying, just simply hang the phone up. But our first suggestion is do not answer if you do not recognize the number. Scams. You are familiar with the word scams? You're getting a lot of scams. There's a lot of scams that's going around. Grandparent scams. Have you all heard of the grandparent scams? Well, I'll tell you a quick story. This was a real story, and it's probably a lot more stories where grandma, she received a call one night that, I forget the young man's name, but Johnny, her grandson Johnny. Now, you know, grandparents, they love their grandchildren. Where Johnny was locked up. So this individual told grandma, well, we need so much money from you to get Johnny out. Well, okay, sure. She sent the money. Where Johnny walked in her house the very next morning, Johnny, why were you arrested? Grandma, I wasn't arrested. So grandma lost her money. So there's a scam out here, grandparent scam. You know your grandson Johnny's a good boy. You know he didn't get arrested. Hang the phone up. There's another scam, Medicaid. Medicaid would never call you. Social Security. Social Security would never call you. IRS, you know, around IRS time, tax time, you start getting those telephone calls. There's a newer scam out, the one ring phone scam. Have you all heard of that? That's where your phone will ring one time. And you know, a lot of us are like, who just called me? And then they're gonna hang up. Well, what they want you to do, they want you to call that number back. And we ask you, do not call that number back because it can be a telephone number that's probably overseas. And if that's the case, then you'll look at your phone bill and there'll be a charge on your phone bill from that particular number. So if your phone rings one time, don't, and a person just hang up, don't call back. Now, if someone calls you, you don't recognize the number or you don't want to answer, if it's someone important, they'll leave you a message, okay? Another thing we want to bring to your attention, our telephone bill. A lot of us is not in the habit of checking our telephone bill every month. But we should check our phone bill at least once a month because there can be someone out here, say I may have a company called, I might have Verizon, just for an example. Verizon is my carrier. But then so another carrier picked up my service. So I'm sending money in every month thinking I'm sending to Verizon, but I'm sending to this new service who changed over to them without my permission. That's called slamming. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to call that new company. I'm going to let them know that you changed my service without my permission. Please refund my money. Then I'm going to call my service Verizon to inform them. So it's important, ladies and gentlemen, that we check our telephone bill at least once a month to make sure that we have the same service. Have you all heard of, this is kind of an old one, yes. You know, someone call you and they'll say, can you hear me now? Don't say yes, because what they could do, take that yes and can use it against you. Well, you said that yes, that I can charge this to your phone bill. So if someone asks you on the phone, can you hear me now? Just hang the phone up. There are so many scams that's going on. So what we're here to do, we're here to help you to educate you on what you should and should not do. We met with the police chief in, I think, Shasta, Minnesota on Monday, and one of the stories he told us that a gentleman called him because he received a call that he was getting ready to get arrested if he don't pay so much money. So what this gentleman and his wife did, they locked their house down. Okay, they were afraid. So the police chief or one of the police officers assured them that they were not being arrested, and it was a scam. These scams, these calls that we're receiving, they sound so real, you know, and it puts fear in us. I have been scammed. A few years ago, it was a cruise that someone was telling me about. It sounds so nice. It really did. For $300-something, that cruise sounds nice. Well, I gave them my credit card information, paid $200-something. Well, when it dawned on me and I started checking, I learned that was a scam. So I called them back and asked for my money back. Of course, they would not get my money back, so I immediately called my bank. And my bank put a red flag on that particular name. So I've been scammed. So it's out there. That cruise sounds real nice, but I'm sure I did not take it. So ladies and gentlemen, we need to just educate ourselves, and we just need to, don't answer the phone. If you answer the phone, just hang up, okay? Anybody have any questions? Well, great. You really said Minnesota and Wisconsin are nice. That's good. Well, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn it over to Chantal, and Chantal is going to give you some other information that you can carry home with you. Thank you.
So, why don't some things happen to stop some of this? For example, the new do not call stuff. That doesn't work.
You want to know why something's not happening to stop this?
Why is the NSA, you know, listening in on our calls?
Well, I'm not for sure about if they're listening on your calls, but at the FCC and other federal agencies, we are working. We are working, and it's a real hard process because every time these agencies make one step forward, well, and you know what, and I really hate to say this, but these folks are smart. They make 2 steps ahead of us, okay? So what we have to do, we have to find another way to try to catch up with them and pass them. But we are trying. So in the meantime, while we're trying to get a handle on this, we're out here to educate, suggest that you do this or do that, okay? But we are back home, back at the agencies back in D.C. trying to get a hold. Now, in the meantime, while we're doing that, your local officials, because a lot of the meetings that we've been to this week, a lot of local officials has attended. We had someone from the Senator Smith's office and another senator office that has been at our meeting, and they know about all this. We have had police chiefs at our meeting. They know about this. They are coming together as a group, as local officials, to also try to figure out what they can do to help you as a consumer. So we are working to get this done. Ms. Keyla can add to that also.
Yes, and I will also send copies of this to Mr. Brendan so that he can share with community leaders such as yourself. But most consumers are aware or may not be aware that the Federal Communications Commission had an open meeting earlier this month on June 6th. And I'm going to read to you a little bit about what was discussed at that meeting and how it actually has helped consumers. So in our open meeting earlier this month, there was a declaratory ruling to affirm that voice service providers may, as the default, block unwanted calls based on unreasonable call analytics. And why this is so important for you as consumers or for your, as community leaders, for your constituents, is that as long as the customers are informed and they have the opportunity to opt out of call blocking, the ruling also clarifies that providers may offer their customers the choice to opt in to tools that block calls from any number that doesn't appear on a customer's contact list. So as an example, if I have 200 numbers on my contact list, and I'm making this up as an example, and there's a call that comes in from a number that's not on that list, this would apply to them. And so this is one of the ways that we the FCC are addressing this problem, and Alma and Chantal can also discuss some of the other options, but we always recommend that talk to your carrier. If there's anything that you need for in terms of learn about what services in terms of call blocking your provider offers, it's the best thing to do is to first contact your provider. There are options. Each provider may have different options, so it's good for you to talk to your provider to see which options may be available to you, and some are free, some may be of low cost.
Remind us where the FCC fits in the total government scheme of things. Are you part of the Commerce Department?
Okay, and the gentleman asked where the FCC, the Federal Communication Commission, falls. So, sir, we are not part of the Department of Commerce. We are actually an independent agency. So we regulate telecommunications, such as satellite, telephone, television. And as an independent agency, we're also not part of what is called the presidential cabinet. So the bigger agencies like Department of Commerce, we are independent. So a lot of the mandates that come down, our chairman reports to Congress. I hope that answers.
I find that hard to believe, but I should look. But I guess we've got some very deep organizations that are independent that we don't even know about. But that answer suggests to me you are one of those very deep organizations that has no boss.
Well, sir, I understand. In fact, if I will actually look up some information. If later on you assign in the sheet, we can send you our information directly from our website, so you can read through. Unfortunately, I don't have a printer right now where I can get this information, but yeah, it is on our website. It is under a section that is called About the FCC, and our website is www.fcc.gov. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I think I'd just like to reaffirm for myself, as well as you guys in the audience here too, that I know that there's a lot of fraud that goes on out there. And I know that for example, the state bureau that deals with it here is DACAP, the Wisconsin Department of Consumer and Trade, whatever. But the investigative powers that the FCC has, or that the state has, there are tools for dealing with fraud, but you guys have to respond within the framework of the law. I mean, you can't, anybody who's committing fraud or trying to suck money out of one of us is not limited by the law. So a lot of times they can be 2 steps ahead because they simply, are operating outside the law. And when you're investigating them, you do have to maintain your side of the law. You can't use illegal tactics to track down a fraud scheme.
Right, and to the gentleman's question / comment is about tracking down fraud and schemes. And the Federal Communications Commission does have an enforcement bureau that works closely with the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, as with all the other bureaus within the commission. I mentioned the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau because that is where we are from. But yes, we do have an enforcement bureau that works closely and looks into these type of issues.
Well, let's talk. I realize Google's a private company. It's almost impossible to find their privacy statement. and what their privacy statement says?
Let's see. The gentleman is asking about Google's privacy statement. Because
I'll summarize it briefly. Probably everybody knows it, but I mean, it's shocking. We are allowed to look at everything in your Google Mail, every item that you send or receive, and we can use it at our discretion for any use that we want to use it.
okay, so one of the things, and Chantal will expand on that later, one of the things that we recommend to consumers with comments such as yours, and thank you for your comment about the statements, is please file a complaint not only with the Federal Communications Commission, but also with the Federal Trade Commission, which we like to say is our sister agency, because we do work together a lot on these type of issues. So it's, again, it's the file a complaint, please, with the Federal Communications Commission. We can do it online or via phone. And there's also, you can file a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission.
This is perfectly legal for an independent corporation like Google. They can do anything they want. This is where I was going a little bit with my question about, you know, what regulatory capability does the FCC have?
So after this session, because we are here to talk about robocalls and scams, please, if you have time to remain after the session, we can discuss further and I can provide you with more information. But I do want to give Chantal Virgile a chance, because some of the things that she talks about may actually be connected to what you're asking and may actually be a helpful resource for you. So I'm turning around to Chantal. Okay.
Thank you, Keyla. Thank you, Alma. I'm going to talk about another resource that we have for you. We understand that your trust is a value. And so we are here today to provide you with resources. We understand that robocalls and scams and challenges in telecommunications exist. And while they do exist, we're here to discuss some of the resources that we have to help you with those challenges. So one of those resources would be the Consumer Help Center. We have an online Consumer Help Center that is just that. It is for the consumer. There are two areas on that website, which is www.fcc.gov/consumer. There are two areas that I would like to highlight that I think would be of interest to you. The first area is usually at the very top of the website. You'll find articles or you'll find paragraphs or some sort of information that is alerting you to something that is happening in real time. So Alma talked about a lot of scams that consumers are experiencing, and sometimes they experience certain scams. They're heightened during certain times, like tax time or Veterans Day or even Christmas, when a lot of consumers are doing their shopping. And so we will have information in that section that will alert you about certain scams that are going on that we need you to know about, so that if you receive those calls or if you come across those scams, you can you'll be aware of them and you can deal with them in a way that does not impact you. For instance, you know that the grandparent scam is going on, and it has a certain type of twist or some type of way of getting consumers to give their money, and the next day your phone rings and you can recognize that's the very same scam that you've already been alerted about on the website. So that's another way that you can kind of be prepared for these things to happen if they happen. The second area I would like to point you to, Keyla already started talking about it, the Consumer Complaint Center. That is our direct line. A lot of the times it's our direct line to consumers. If you have a telecommunication issue, not just with robocalls, but any telecommunication issue that you are unable to solve yourself, you're still having challenges after trying to find a solution yourself to this challenge, then we encourage you to file a complaint with the Federal Communications Commission using our Consumer Complaint System. Complaint Center, sorry. Through the Consumer Complaint Center, we are able to gauge what your telecommunication experiences are. What challenges are you having? We gauge this, and then that has the opportunity to influence rulemakings. It has the opportunity to influence how we communicate back to you, some of the things that we do at the commission, how we treat certain challenges that we know that you're having. It influenced us being here today. There are several different arms of the commission. We represent the arm or the area that speaks back to you. We represent, or we would like to advocate for the consumer. If there's anything going on in the commission and we see that it will be beneficial for you to know about, that is our job. That's why we're here today. We like to educate consumers on the tools that they can use to help them avoid scams, to help them understand how to better make use of their telecommunication devices, services, and experiences. So if you have any more questions, this would be the time for it. Yes?
Yeah, the other organizations I'd like to also just kind of put forth in addition to the FCC. I know that, obviously I'm a volunteer for ARP as far as their fraud network. I know a lot of volunteers who are trying to train consumers to be recognizing fraud. And I know that the Better Business Bureau also maintains a very good program. And I think that the more information that's out there certainly is the better armed we're going to be as consumers. And I do think, that the FCC does do a fairly good job being out there and saying, these are things that are coming up. These are broadband issues. These are telehealth issues. These are things that we think that you, as a citizen, need to comment on, to give us guidance on. And so, in that sense, I really appreciate the outreach that FCC does, because it's
Stop there. I'm going to reiterate that before I forget. In short, if you did not hear what this gentleman has just said, he complimented the FCC for the outreach that we're doing to consumers to educate them. Now you can go. You can continue. Anything else?
I know you guys we're going to discuss broadband and telehealth issues a little bit, and I probably came in after you guys got started, but I was kind of looking forward to exploring a little bit of that. And I could even I'd even be willing to stay afterwards and kind of find out what I know and don't know about those things.
Okay. There was a question about telehealth, and certainly Keyla can talk a little more about telehealth if that's what you're interested in. Okay.
I would be interested in hearing from others of how you're handling robocalls, and I'm willing to share what I do. I had charter. I have the ability, and it's improved considerably over time, up to blocking 50 calls. Now, the problem is the phone rings. I suggest you set it to a minimum number of rings, which at that time I dial *60. And the voice comes on, I'm willing to block the latest call that you got. And phone ring 5 times. The robocall people, and then if they know, they're going to leave. So a lot of your systems, whether it's your own device or whether it's owned by the phone company,
Can I stop
you
you?
can't get to, well, it may be a minimum of 3 rings. Most of the time you can get 2. There's some of the new boxes that you buy, you get down to 1. Maybe you only have to listen once.
Can I stop you there to reiterate, because it might not be something that everyone can hear. So what this gentleman has said, he's talking about different methods for dealing with robocalls, and certainly there are a lot of different methods for dealing with robocalls. He's suggesting that you turn down the amount of times that your phone rings. That's certainly a way to avoid the nuisance of listening to your phone ring several times. That's a pretty clever way to minimize it. Other ways to minimize robocalls is to also call your carrier. I think Alma talked a little bit about this. If you call your carrier may be able to give you some information about how to, or they might have a system of how to eliminate or minimize the amount of robocalls that you receive. Different carriers have different technologies. There are also apps that you might be able to download depending on the type of phone that you have. I know I've seen a lot of consumers, they'll receive a robocall and it will show up as scam likely, or it won't ring at all, or it'll ring and it'll indicate that this is a call that you might not want to answer. That is definitely the option. Whatever method that you take, the most important thing to remember is to never give your personal information over the phone, ever. If you decide you want to answer the phone, which we tell you don't answer unwanted numbers, that's an option. If you answer the unwanted or the unknown number and you realize it is a robocall, we ask you to hang up. That is a method. If you end up speaking to someone that you do not trust, we ask that you do not give out personal information to someone that has called you and you have not verified who these people are. So for instance, you might get a call from what may seem like your doctor's office. And they say, for example, oh, well, our systems are down, we need your member number. How do you know that's your doctor's office? We suggest that if that happens or something similar to that happens, you say, you know what? I'm going to hang up and call you right back. And what you do, you hang up the phone, you get a number that you have verified is the correct number to that organization, and you call them back and say, hey, I just got a phone call. You were asking for personal information. I'm ready now. So you have to, unfortunately, you have to be a little bit more or a lot more on guard when you are receiving a call, because you don't know who's on the other end. When you're dialing out, you know that that number is more than likely connected to who you want to connect to. But unfortunately, when you're receiving the number, or you're receiving the call, that's when you get into kind of a trust issue. And we've talked a lot about trust, I think, in this meeting. There's definitely some trust issues. There's definitely reason to second guess. And we say second guess when you receive a call. That's when you want to question your ability to trust. Okay? Any other questions?
When is the do not call list going to be modified to really mean do not call?
Kayla, you want to handle that?
Every time I get a call from someone, I go, I'm on the do not call list, thank you, good day.
I'm glad you asked that question. There was a question about the do not call list. Keyla has been really good in handling that question. We've received that question a few times while we've been on the road trip, so I'm gonna let her handle that. It's okay.
We, at the FCC, and did you repeat the lady's question, just so in case someone did not hear it? The lady's asking about the National Do Not Call Registry. We have been told that a lot of people have registered their numbers and they're still getting calls. Right now, that is still one of the resources that exist out there for consumers. We are letting them know that if all your devices, if you have a landline, if you have a smart device that receives your phone calls, please register them on the National Do Not Call Registry. This does, when you register, and it's a very simple process if you have not gone through it, you can do it online. It's a simple process. It does help eliminate the calls. If there are legitimate, especially legitimate businesses that look at this list, they will not call you. Unfortunately, somebody may not look at the list and do call, but that is a resource. We also, at the Federal Communications Commission, remind consumers that you can file an informal complaint, including about the amount of calls that you receive. We have the Consumer Complaint Center online, but you can also, if you want to speak to someone directly, that is that 888-225-5322 number, and it's toll-free. It's important for consumers to file complaints with us. It's one of the resources that we use and one of the resources that consumers have.
But the lady's right. I mean, it does not work, period.
Everybody says, I'm not
charitable
covered by
calls
that.
and, and suddenly everybody's become a charity. Now, I thought I had read here recently that there was some legislation to really put teeth into, but I've kind of forgotten.
Okay,
What that was.
we understand your frustration. We have it. We are consumers too, and we get frustrated just as much as everyone else. We totally understand your frustration. We are graciously taking your frustration, your comments. It's not a problem. But what we like to focus on, and what we're here to focus on, is what does work. Okay, and what does work is reiterating, not giving out your personal information. I mean, there's two legs of these scams, right? It's the part that's a nuisance because your phone is ringing, you don't want it to ring unless it's a legitimate call, right? But then there's this other leg that's the scam, that's collecting your money, taking it, and you don't want that to happen. We are trying to address that scam part, which is a whole lot more important, right? It's a bigger impact on you when you're scammed out of your money. The nuisance is a problem, but the scam is an even bigger issue. And we're trying to give you tools that actually work. We know that it works when you don't give out your personal information. A lot of people aren't aware of the scams, so that they are giving out their personal information. So that's why we're here. We go on tours, we have tip cards, we have all sorts of information in different forms to help consumers understand, to make them aware that these things are happening. I'm sure, everyone in this room is aware, but we are out on the road all the time and we meet people who actually fall for these scams. Alma herself, who works for the Federal Communications Commission, I'm sorry to pick on you, but she just said she almost fell for this scam. It is very easy. So the more we are aware, the more we practice not giving out our personal information when we receive that call, that's something that actually works. While everything else is going on the side as far as trying to figure out how to eliminate these calls, We know that it works when you don't give out your personal information.
And in addition to that, we keep reminding consumers that it is important to contact your carrier. If you have not done so already, please do so. They do have available features, and as we said before, every carrier may have something different to offer, but the most important thing is to call them. And again, for those of you that have smart devices, go through your app store and try to find apps. You can probably, for example, put in perhaps robocalls or call blocking, and it'll give you a list of apps. And as we mentioned before, some of these apps may be of no cost to you, but there may be some that have a low cost associated with it. But as you read through the description, and this is specifically for the apps, when you read through the description, you might find one that you would like to use versus others. But again, going back, talk to your carrier, your service provider for information, and they will let you know what options they have available to block calls, because we do understand that this is an annoyance for consumers. But again, these are some of the resources that are currently available right now, and we want to let consumers know that they're available and that it may lessen the amounts of calls that you do receive. Yes, ma'am?
I hope you don't mind my chiming in. So I'm from the State Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. And I just want to reinforce everything that they've been stating. Those are the tools that empower you to combat against this. The other tool that you have with the Consumer Resource Center or filing a complaint with us is some of it made national news last night, and that we work with our federal partners, the FCC and the FTC, to combat against the individuals who are making these calls or the teams of individuals. And last night they announced one of the major crackdowns that the Federal Trade Commission was involved with, where we're feeding all of our data back up to a database that's called Consumer Sentinel, and the complaints all get compiled across these agencies for them to combat against these individuals that are making these calls. And so there was a huge crackdown of a bunch of individuals, but there are successes behind this in finding the people who are doing this. And they're different from the people who might be violating do not call, because that is about selling you something by phone and you saying, I don't want to receive sales phone calls. I don't want to receive phone calls selling me something on my phone. These people are trying to steal your money and your information. They're not selling anything. And it's that the law doesn't cover them for that reason. And the state has been working to try and enhance based on what's happening at the federal level as well, to combat with the different protocols for the carriers, and then making certain call blocking illegal for criminal purposes. So they're talking about all the things that you can do to empower, but then reporting when you're getting these and filing those complaints, so the messages can be tracked, and you can help your friends and neighbors by knowing the recent scams so they don't fall victim. But then we have the data to know who to go after before they change up. So I hope you don't mind my.
No, thank you very much. Because, Ms. Michelle is correct. There are a lot of partnerships with her agency, the Federal Communications Commission and the Federal Trade Commission, and there are others too. And that is what helps to address this issue, the partnerships that we all have amongst all these agencies. But again, as she said, and I cannot state it enough, the most important thing is to file a complaint with the FCC, with the FTC, with your local organizations here in La Crosse. It's so important. It's very important. And we really, all the agencies that have been mentioned here before, we do look at and consider the information that's provided to us. And just so you know, we do keep names confidential. So we do not forward names of anyone that has filed a complaint.
I had a question about tools. We were talking about that and malicious calls and stuff like that. We often at the reference desk get questions via phone. Somebody's seen a number on their phone, they're not familiar with it, and ask for a reverse number lookup. And oftentimes the white pages will have information on it if there's a likelihood of scam or not. But other than the white pages, are you familiar with any online tools of people reporting phone numbers that they've gotten that may be scams, that is not maybe public information provided to you directly, but somewhere that consumers might be able to do a reverse number lookup in a database of malicious numbers?
Well,
That's a,
what I've heard, and you know what, I'm gonna start trying that myself, where that number come up, you don't recognize it, Google that number, and Google will tell you this is a fake, or whatever the language is in there. I've heard people say that they've been doing that. Also, while I'm talking, I was just sitting over there looking at the App Store, if you're familiar with the App Store on your phone. There are free call blocking apps on here. There are several. So again, before you even do that, call your carrier, ask them if they have a particular app or something that they can, that you can get from them to block. If not, the App Store do have free apps for call blocking, several of them.
Excuse you for one more. And we want to step back a little and say that not all robocalls are illegal or unwanted. And this means that, for example, and I know Alma and Chantal have mentioned this before, there are calls that you do want to receive. And so these could include your call, your pharmacist calls that your medications are ready. There's a snow alert somewhere and you want to get that information. If you have children, grandchildren that go to school, especially K through 12, you want to get notices about school closings. So not everything is always unwanted or illegal or leads to scams. Those type of calls would definitely not lead to scam. One thing that we want to also reiterate is the information about spoofing.
yes.
And so with spoofing, nowadays there's a scam, the neighbor spoofing. So this can mean I am sitting at home and I see a phone number that comes in. I think it's my neighbor because it looks a lot like her number. But when I pick up, it's an automated call. And so again, the advice goes back to file a complaint, especially keep tab of that number that called you, file a complaint. Also, you know, as soon as you hear an automated message that is not your neighbor or your friend, please hang up. And if you do hang on to the call and someone, it is a live person, and you are not recognizing who it is, it's okay to hang up. You really don't have to continue the conversation.
Responding to the question about, I guess, reverse number lookup, off the top of my head, not necessarily thinking about it for a really long time, which I feel like I need to, but I feel as if a reverse number lookup to verify if a number is authentic or not may be a slippery slope because of spoofing. So a better way to verify that that it is the organization that they are saying that they are, that the caller is saying that they are, is to look up the organization online. I don't want to point out any particular organizations, but let's say the FCC. You want to look up www.fcc.gov and find the number there on a trusted website and then call that number back. But to depend on what just any online website may say about a reverse number lookup, because of spoofing and other technologies, I would not use that as a real trusted tool in this case and what we're talking about.
How many people have received calls from their own number?
That is also spoofing. It's the same thing that Keyla and Alma was referring to. It's just to get you to answer the phone, right? So if I see I'm calling myself, this is weird. I'm kind of curious to see how this thing is happening, who's going to be on the other end. And that's how they get you to pick up. But again, you pick up, you realize it's a scam, you hang up, and you certainly do not give them your personal information. Can you hear me when I say this?
Yeah.
Was that a yup? Was that a yes? Was that a yes? So when I call you, when I call you and ask you that question, can you hear me? You say yup. You say yes. It's that easy. It's that easy. I just scammed you. It's that easy. So it's always good to be alert and to not say yes, and do not give your personal information. Yes.
I think all of us should be very aware of this, and a lot of us are raised in an era where it was always polite to answer the phone. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people didn't have phones, and so it was a valuable thing to answer the phone. You may be taking a message for your neighbor down the road. So I think that's always a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, I think people need to harden themselves a little bit more. And I know personally, I went back to my hometown to visit an old college buddy. I phoned him. I had to leave a voicemail. He called me back a couple of seconds later saying, you know, Reed, I didn't have your cell phone number. I'm sorry. It wasn't in my contacts. I didn't recognize it. I didn't answer it. I got your message. I called you back. I said, that's perfectly fine. I don't mind in the slightest getting a call back from somebody, you know, having to make 2 calls instead of 1, because he's protecting himself.
Yes. Give that man a hug.
Yes.
That's
And
exactly
I'll
what you should
repeat
do.
in case someone didn't hear. So the gentleman was sharing an experience that he had calling was it a college friend when he went back home, and the friend did not pick up the phone because he did not recognize the number. And that is exactly what we're letting consumers know, that it is a way to protect yourself. And as the gentleman said, his friend did respond as soon as he picked up the voicemail, because he knew it was someone that he knew that was calling him. And so this is also, we understand that people want to be polite, and you want to answer the phone, and perhaps if you get a live person on the other end, engage in the conversation. But as we understand, we've been told that this community is very friendly, and yes, it is, because we have experienced it ourselves, and we've only been here a few hours. But we do want to remind you, it's okay to hang up on someone if you don't recognize who that person is, or if it's an automated call, just please hang up. It's a great line of defense, and like the gentleman was saying, we always let consumers know if somebody really wants to get in contact with you, they'll leave a voicemail.
So, okay, in response to they leave a voicemail, and you don't recognize the person, recognize the number, how do you respond to that voicemail then?
It's the same thing. Yeah, it's if the lady is asking, what do you do if you get a voicemail from someone you don't know? The best advice is not to call whatever number they leave on the voicemail. Please do not call that number back. Yes. And you can delete that voicemail, especially if it's something automated. And many of these will actually be silent, and then all of a sudden you hear something along the lines of perhaps, and please call back such and such a number, or they ask you press 1 or 2 or some number. Please do not press, because that just gives the caller information that yours is a live number.
Yes. So that's actually another scam where they say to opt out of receiving these phone calls, please press this number. Hang up. Do not press any numbers. Do not say yes. Do not give out personal information. If there's a message left on your answering machine, as Keyla has said, and you might want to call back that organization, you get a verified number yourself. You do not call that number back. You get a verified number from a trusted source. Okay? And these tools work. We're arming you with workable tools. And that all makes us happy, right?
You know, and I want to say, just for a moment, that quick, I stood here as a consumer. I forgot I was an FCC employee. And I'm listening to them. So it came to my mind, it was like, gosh, that's a lot of work. But that's what it's going to take to protect ourselves, a lot of work. So I step back into my FCC role right now. We may be saying a lot, and this is probably what it's going to take in the meantime to do a lot of work to protect ourselves. So, protect yourself. If
I'm
you
going to
haven't,
suggest that NSA, the government, knows every scammer number in the United States. And if somebody wanted to stop this, it can be done.
And in the meantime, you can take the tools that we're offering you to protect yourself, right?
Okay, I hope I live long enough to.
You're here today, so if you get a call right now, you have tools to protect yourself in the meantime.
Okay, we're coming upon the time to our, and I don't believe it's almost time. So we are coming upon our time to close. We want to thank everyone for listening and also for your questions, because we really do take these questions seriously, and we come back to our organization and see how we can use this information to improve and to provide even more information to consumers. So everyone, thank you so much. We will be here for a few more minutes on the side if anyone has any additional questions regarding the information presented today.
you come see Kayla. You had a question about telehealth?
Thank you.
Welcome.